system unfolding. Military science fiction podcast. Untold stories every Wednesday. Military science fiction podcast. Discussion, interviews, reviews, and rants. Military science fiction podcast.
All right, well, hey everybody, welcome to the show. Today we are talking about relationships in MILSF, and we don't mean like some kind of romanticy, romantimilsf crossover that's gonna eat the genre, because we know somebody's like looking for a way to do that.
It wouldn't work, you know.
Oh, somebody's gonna figure it out, man.
I'm gonna do it.
Well, the thing is like it's like they might do it, and it might become romance. This biggest next thing might be science, romance, sci-fi, or whatever. Romance science, science. But like, it's not like
Roma SF.
it's not
Get
like
it, Jake. It's Chinatown.
it's not like there's a lot of science fiction readers who are just like, oh, if only there was more sex in my sci-fi. You
I feel
know,
like there's a lot of 80s and 90s writers that thought that. I don't know. We don't spend enough time describing
80s and
breasts. Like,
90s. You haven't read a lot of 70s.
I know. That's
sci-fi,
how I'm thinking. We got to go way back. Like we got to do some Asimov back there, because 13-year-old me is like, who's staring at chess this much? Like, who's making that a writing exercise?
Yeah.
But anyway, we're not actually. I was going down the romance road, but we're not. It's not all about romance, right? Like, I think there are some sort of misconceptions about military science fiction that soldiers are, death-dealing automatons who don't have feelings, and MILSF is a genre that reflects that, which I think we've talked about that. Not only, some of them might be, but we've talked about that. We just haven't talked about it explicitly as a topic. And so relationships from, romantic relationships, like we just said, parents, battle buddies, you're like looking left and right and who's there next to you. Like the minute you join a unit, there's a relationship there. It's just got some very codified, parts to it. Go ahead.
Can I talk about the hardest relationship to present in most military science fiction? And that is parents.
Yeah.
Because
Why do you
most
say
military
that?
science fiction it's far, far away from your home, like light years away. Every M8 MILSF I read, and most of the ones I've written, it's a World War II type of situation where nobody gets to go home like on leave because you're so far away from home. So it's really hard to present a relationship with parents except like in flashbacks or maybe, communications from home.
I did that in Strikers War, where it was a letter to the parents, but it was one of the death letters that you would give to your buddy, and that's how I started the book. Every chapter had a line or two from this letter, and so from chapter 1 it says, "Mom and Dad, if you're reading this, I'm not coming home," and he goes through the letter and the.
It's not that I'm dead. I just don't like it there.
Yeah, but it was the book
That's
was
a great
written. It was written in such a way that you didn't know which of the main characters was writing the letter, and you didn't find that out until the ending. So I didn't really play with the parent relationship, but you could see that he had a good relationship with his parents. And he talked about in the letter, like, "Dad, you taught me how to do this," and so like you could see the relationship there, but also I wanted to really show the relationship between the two main characters who were good friends, and what a sacrifice meant for brothers in the field, because like Band of Brothers did that a lot, right, where they were dealing with the brotherhood and the tight bonds that form there. And so I kind of played around with that. I don't know that I've ever done. I skirted around doing a romantic relationship in the Valor trilogy with two of the characters, and I don't even remember if I ever got to the point where they were actually dating or talking to each other. But it was one of those, oh, you like her, come on, you do, yeah, that kind of thing. But I don't know that I've ever done a romantic relationship between two characters, whether it's a husband and wife. I mean, in Weaponized, she's married, and I think in the third book we're going to meet her and have some interaction there to kind of dive into that. But um, I, I don't know. Have you guys ever written? I mean, I know Rick and Archangel, they're married, and
Every
and
single
Mhm.
military science fiction book I have ever written has some kind of relationship,
yeah,
because I feel
Like
like
romantic relationships.
sure,
yeah, romantic relationships. I feel like if you want your characters to be real people, well, real people get lonely,
for sure.
Right.
and they're either going to go to whatever the future equivalent is of the red light district, or they're going to form a relationship. That's one thing that you can see in even in overseas, in like the Iraq War, Afghanistan War, uh, where you're not really permitted to even pursue romantic relationships with the
Which
locals,
was crazy. Well, yeah, not with the locals, but like,
but romantic relationships develop between service people over there. Sometimes very against the rules relationships that are, you know, wind up being adultery or whatever. But even in those extreme cases where it's against the rules, it could end your career, and it's not, it's morally and ethically shady, it still happens. So
Well, that's
I
because
just,
you take people and you put them in extreme situations
yeah.
far from home, and you say, hey, you have to risk your life, you have to kill people, you have to possibly be killed, but oh no, you're not allowed to have sex. It's the dumbest thing ever. The
Right,
dumbest thing ever.
right.
It's like you can say that, but then to expect them not to do it is just ridiculous.
It's like you can't drink alcohol over there either, but that happened too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in the army and I was almost deployed to Korea. I wish I had been because it would have been cool, but I got the Korean briefing, and like they opened the briefing with, do not date locals, do not come home with a Korean wife, do not get married, are you listening to me, private? It just was like,
but Juicy Girl.
I am 19 years old, I was not planning on getting married, but the I you know, Rebecca, as you know, is a cover designer, and one of the things that she does when she is like talking to a client is, she's first thing she has to know is, well, what genre are you writing in? And she gets a lot of clients who say, oh, well, it's a little bit this, it's a little bit that, it's a little bit comedy, it's a little bit romance, it's a little bit, she's like, no, 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 every story is a
It's a
little
little
bit
bit not going to
everything.
make money.
Yeah.
Every story is a little bit everything, because it's stories about people.
Right.
Right.
It could be about squirrels and it's still about people. And the every story if it's a human story, has a little bit of comedy, a little bit of romance, a little bit of action, a little bit of thrills, a little bit of horror. Every story has that. That's not what makes it a genre. And so you always know who you're talking to, like on the professional scale. Like if they try to pull that, it's beyond genre stuff, because
Beyond
Right.
genre and beyond,
it's beyond sales.
yeah, beyond getting any sales. It ain't going to get any.
So everything
You
I've
can
ever
write that
written,
stuff all day and publish it yourself, but you're not going to sell it to anybody. Just so you know.
yeah. And so everything I've ever written, like when I'm getting in the head of the people I'm writing, when I'm like, and you're doing good when you're like, when you realize, okay, this character needs something and I haven't given it to them. And ultimately it all leads to some sort of romantic relationship with somebody else in the book, because that's how people are. You can't put people in a situation and be like, okay, now you get to be perfectly chaste and never pursue a romantic relationship. And I thought
Another
I did.
thing, another thing that bugs me, really bugs me. You're talking about mixing genres, is when people try to make the relationships in a Milscifi, for example, something that you would find in a rom-com. Theirs are not going to be the
Like
same type of
yeah, will
relationships.
they,
You don't
won't they, meet
you,
cute,
you don't get into those
right.
relationships when you're at war.
Well, I mean, and
Or they're very immature.
most
Yeah.
people don't get into those relationships in real life. I mean, like
No.
Yeah.
I fell in love with Rebecca the moment I saw her, and it was a foregone conclusion at that point. And so
But
the
even if they might happen in real life, they're going to happen in a situation where that is your biggest problem in life.
Yeah. Most people who get that I've met in my personal life who have been in those will they or won't they relationships, it almost inevitably ended with won't they? Because
Right.
when you're constantly breaking up and getting back together, it causes stress and all kinds of
Well,
crap.
they're addicted to that stress, not an actual
Yeah.
strong relationship. And
But
ask me how I know.
I knew when I was writing Grimm's War, I knew him and Nadia were gonna be a thing from the beginning because the characters that I kind of crafted were foils for each other. Nani
Mhm.
is a quick talking rogue, basically, if you were talking about D&D, and Jacob's a paladin. And it's kind of a perfect, they're kind of a perfect match for each other. And I knew I wanted to progress that relationship throughout the course of the books. And what I just released, what, 7 or 8? I can't remember. And how many Drop Trooper books have you released, Rick?
Well, it's over now. There's 16 of them.
Okay. But I knew I wanted to have it like progress throughout the thing, and especially deal with the whole like because we've all been deployed in one form or another. Deal with the whole like you're away from home, you don't have access to the person that you're interested in. All you have is letters or whatever. And then you add in it being in space where it's like, hey, you might be deployed on this ship to a system that is literally 3 months just to travel to.
Mhm.
And then you're going to be there for a year.
And
And
also the whole one of the things we were talking about discussing today was communications. But communications and time lag has a lot to do with relationships that you're going to have in a book. Because if you have like a sweetheart back home and you have instantaneous communications, well, maybe you can make that work for your deployment. You
Yeah.
can like talk every
Yeah.
day
I mean,
or
one of the
almost every day. But
strangest,
if you have a time lag where there is no faster than light communications, and the only way to get a message home is to put it on a ship and send it home, well, you'll
right.
be lucky to talk to that person once every few months.
In Retreat Hell, I'm basically doing video, they send video back and forth because that's the only way to get a packet back home on a ship
Mhm.
that's, going back. But one of the weirdest things during my career that, I kind of lived real time was there was a point where you could drive half across the country, do a video chat, and then that was super weird and awkward, and then wait for that to happen again. And you did get to call sometimes. But then now we're in a time and it's progressed where you could leave Iraq, fly to Germany in like less than a day, and now you're no longer in that mindset and that way of being, and now you're expected to go have those relationships back, and all the people that you were, your family and people you're interacting with, like even other people for me in the army, like they don't know the things that are going on inside your head, and so that really messes with those relationships and what their expectations are about how you can respond to anything. And
Right.
now it's just wild to me that like Rick has family that he can, it's not quite instantaneous, but the fact that they can talk almost
I
instantaneously is
can
just,
Facebook message with him
yeah.
whenever he's got connection.
I mean, the thing that like I probably might still be married to my first wife if that was possible. It was just like it
Yeah.
made relationships so hard, you know
I
um
remember even in basic, when I went through basic, you got a call like within the first couple of days, but then it was weeks before you could make a phone call and you could write, letters. And even in tech school, I remember writing letters to well, at the time we were engaged, but my first wife, we wrote letters back and forth, but that's the only form of communication you could have. And I think a lot of that was part of the process at the time, but it also was
mhm.
the technology. It wasn't so readily available. But now I see videos and reels and stuff from basic where kids have their cell phones and are calling and texting. I don't know how frequently it is, but um it's just the change in technology. And like you're saying, in space, you're depending on what type of story you're telling, there's going to be that time lag.
Yeah.
But maybe there isn't. But even if there isn't, you might not have the opportunity to,
Well,
like
time
in.
dilation kicks in and you're never going to see your family again, you
Well,
know?
it's that. Well, yes, but like in weaponized, near instant communication is a thing across
Hmm.
the galaxy. It's almost like the pseudoscience subspace communication in Star Trek, where it's instant communication wherever they're at.
I take
But in,
offense to the word pseudo.
uh,
Fantastical.
But we can't say bull crap.
No,
Yeah,
it's it was
right.
actually based on an actual paper written about Einstein's space-time theory.
The subspace transmission stuff.
Yeah, based on the idea that space-time is a plane of existence underneath our dimension, and that since space-time permeates the entire galaxy, entire universe at the same time, dipping into
Binds the galaxy together.
that space-time would allow you to instantly transfer information from one place to another, because the plane that is space-time is a lake, not a river. So time exists all at the same time.
I gotcha.
So okay, yeah,
Okay.
it is a little pseudoscience, but it was based on actual science.
Quasi pseudoscience. How about that? Quasi
Here we go.
Now,
pseudoscience.
now it's
Yeah.
just dark energy. It's dark matter, right?
Right.
Connecting all the
Yeah, everybody says dark, or quantum. Throw quantum in front of it.
quantum.
Right, but in weaponized, they're just because of the nature of their assignment, they can't communicate. There's radio silence, right? So you have to deal with that.
Loose lips sink ships.
Right. But one of the things that I find interesting about relationships in military genre, but also Milscifi, is the surprise relationship that comes out of like really stressful scenarios, right? Like you're talking about, like people deployed and having relationships and hooking up and whatever. Yeah, that happens. But I think one of the best examples of like an impromptu relationship like that. Have you guys ever seen Enemy at the Gates?
Yeah.
It's a sniper movie from World War II.
Yeah, Stalingrad.
It's Rachel Weisz, man. Of course I've seen it.
Yeah, but that scene where they hook up and they're like in the abandoned factory or whatever, and they're hiding like that. I think that is one of the most well done, stressful, impromptu relationship sequences. Just because like it's not clean, it's not happy. It's just like, this is what we need to, like, whatever you want to call it, physically or biochemically or whatever. That's what they felt the need to do at the
Reaffirm
time.
There was Hawkeye and Hot Lips and MASH.
Yeah, true.
Well, there is. I think that's the thing. Like under stressful situations, it is a human response that people do. I think it can
You
be.
sound a little like the character from Demolition Man.
I'm not remembering that line. What does he say?
Like that stressful situations can make you
Oh, well, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, they do. There are like, I can't remember what comic it was that had like a whole bit about being on a plane that almost crashes and like the crazy, or no, it was in Clerks, was it? Or Mallrats? It was a Kevin Smith thing where he tells this whole story about being on a plane that almost crashes and everybody starts getting, I don't know, never mind. But, but, but I think, if we're talking about people being in stressful situations, okay, there's a romantic piece of it. There's also the brotherhood piece of it, the comradeship, you know, those experiences that bind people together that are going to last your whole life. Like, they're already, maybe just because you're younger, you are binding with people more than you might if you were older. But the friendships that you have, like, a lot of times those friendships it's very hard to replicate that outside of the military. And I think seeing that done well in a story is one of my favorite things, to watch people grow together that way, or two people that, who the heck is this crazy person? And then they become friends and have these experiences. And also when you get gut punched because then that person dies,
Yeah.
that is something that you don't often experience in a lot of other genres,
Right. Well, and I like the enemy to friends trope, even though sometimes it's kind of overdone and kind of ham-fisted in a way when done right. Like I had a lot of people that I worked with on the police department and in the military that I didn't get along with at all, and then you go through a stressful situation, and like I had a academy classmate who we hated each other. Like we were so, like, she was in my squad, and it was
truly enemies to friends.
it was just one of those things where it's like, oh, I don't like this person. And then after class one day, we were talking about the class and the squad and kind of griping and moaning, and this truck just speeds into the parking lot, just, I mean, hammer down, and you could hear the tires squealing, and we thought like we were getting attacked, and so we start like trying to move for cover, and the truck squeals to a stop. This woman jumps out of the passenger seat. She's carrying this baby and just screaming, "My baby is choking." And I ended up grabbing the baby. I did CPR. Taylor called 911, and we start like doing all this stuff. And
Instant friendship.
oh yeah, after that, like, could not be separated. Like that one thing like just changed the whole dynamic of our relationship, and we were best friends ever since. But there's many examples of that kind of, where you don't like each other, or you don't like the way this person does something, and then they end up whatever saving the day because of how they're doing something, and that changes the perception of from the other character, and they become bonded that way. Those kind of things really are interesting to see when done well in fiction, because we all know like um uh we all know what happens in those situations, and we've all been there. And so seeing that done well in a story really, aside from getting the tech right, or the lingo or anything like that, that kind of relationship interaction, when done right, really speaks to those of us that have been in those kind of circles and seen that type of thing happen, because we're like, oh yeah, I've been there, even though if it's not exactly the same scenario.
I deal with that a lot too, which is, they beat the enemy, either in person at some point, here and there. And I know, I can't remember which book it was that I wrote, but in one of the Grimm's books, and just so you guys all know, Josh told us this in chat just now. The baby lived. The baby was
Yeah, I saved the baby. I saved the baby. Yeah.
is that like I remember one where Jacob like took the surrender of the ship, and the guy was really surprised at how that Jacob was willing to rescue his spaced crew. And he's like, when your ship is going down, we're all sailors, and that was one of the hard things I think in World War II we had dealing with the Japanese, which is they were not like that. They were not.
Right.
You do not want to be rescued by the Japanese,
Right.
And the Japanese did not want you to rescue them. I forget which pilot it was, but it was one of the greatest Marine aces who ever flew. One time was flying his plane, and he was looking around, and there were dozens of empty parachutes floating down to the ocean, because the Japanese pilots, after ejecting, would unbuckle from their chutes and drop to their death rather than be captured.
Wow.
And so it's kind of hard for us to like conceptualize that sort of commitment to cause.
Yeah.
So outside of that, you can have some really great friendships. Like I had in book one, there was a spy who was pretty despicable, and then book four ends up becoming an ally for Nadia. And it was like one of the most fun relationships I ever wrote, because at any moment you really believe that either Nadia was going to pull out her pistol and shoot the girl, or the girl was going to betray her. And in the end, ended up being pretty awesome to write. And I keep trying to actually recapture that a little bit, because I think it was one of the best things I've ever written.
I've got a relationship in Weaponized in this over the series arc, where one of the characters, who's a spy, but he's been living as a bounty hunter, and kind of a quasi assassin. I said quasi again, pseudo assassin, and
Quasi demi.
Pseudo, fake, and quasi is a sort of.
yes, a pseudo quasi assassin. He operates a completely different way than the military character that I have, in terms of how he just accomplishes his stuff, and he doesn't live under a certain rules or regulations, or any kind of conventions. He just goes and does his own thing. And so when they get together and they start doing things in book two, the military guy has a really big problem with how he does things. He's like, this is not the right way to do it. That we've got rules and regulations, and there's, human rights and all of these kind of military things that go into his way of thinking. And the other dude's like, all that stuff's out the window, man. Like, that doesn't apply here. You're not in the military anymore. You're not that guy. Like, this is not how, if you want to survive, this is what we're going to have to do. And so they wrestle with that, and they kind of come to an understanding throughout the book, and both characters kind of tilt the way they do things slightly toward the other direction. The military character kind of loosens up a little bit, and the assassin character kind of goes back towards the more like
Probably shouldn't do war crimes, maybe.
right, right,
It's
right.
not a war crime the first time you do it.
Yeah, exactly. It's only a war crime if you get caught.
But
Yeah.
you know.
One of the neat things too about the military is that you get a lot of like situations. Like when I was in basic training, one of the drill sergeants, his name is Bonds, and he really, I don't know, he took shine to me, and he really tried to help me out. And now I think of him as an older dude, but I was 19. He was probably 26.
Right.
Drill sergeant, which means he was a staff sergeant, or he was a sergeant first class. I think he was a staff sergeant. It's probably like 25 or 26, 5 minutes older than me. But for my, I'm 6'4", and I've always been big. I have broad shoulders, and a lot of my length is in my torso, and so running is not a thing that I enjoy or do or am good at.
Same.
My best time ever was 14 minutes and 17 seconds for 2 miles, and I got that the day I graduated basic training because he ran alongside me to pace me, because I do not have timing. I can't sing, I can't play the guitar, because I have no sense of timing at all. I don't have an internal metronome. And he knew that if I just ran at the right pace, I'd be okay.
Yeah.
So he ran beside me in his drill sergeant uniform, not his PT uniform, in his straight up combat boots, Smokey the Bear hat and everything, for 2 miles so I could pass the PT test. And I will never forget that. And so you have this great opportunity in military sci-fi to have those sort of mentory relationships where the old guys and old girls help the new guys and new girls, and sort of build up that, like, let me pass along our knowledge. One of the strengths of the U.S. military is the NCO Corps, which very few other militaries have.
Yeah.
Where you pass on this knowledge that they have learned. Pass on what you have learned.
Yeah, and I think not a lot, but some genre works get that wrong. Like they want to have the salty NCO, and they want to have the guy that just talks crap to everybody and he's mean to everybody. But 9 times out of 10, that NCO is doing that for a reason. He's not just mean. He's doing it for a reason. And if you really can look through the gruffness of the NCO, a lot of NCOs are gruff because they're dealing with stupid privates all day, or stupid lieutenants for that matter. And they're just tired of dealing with that stuff. But a lot of them are grumpy like that for a reason. And if you look past that and hear what they're saying or seeing what they're doing, a lot of them are teaching, even when they're getting in somebody's butt for messing up. You know what I mean? And those are the best. I mean, that we've all had our horrible NCOs, or the horrible officers or lieutenants or captains that are just not good, and they're just in it for themselves. But
the thing I hate is somebody that's both mean and lazy. Or they're mean because they're lazy.
right.
Like, I would much rather have somebody that was mean because they care.
Yeah.
And then I think that's a character that I enjoy a lot more. I guess I've just met more of the mean and lazy ones in my career. But that's fun in fiction.
My first supervisor in the military, he wasn't mean, but he was kind of a dick. And I was testing for flight security controller, which is basically like a desk sergeant, but it's in the missile field. You have 1 MAF and then 10 dispersed nuclear sites. And as the flight security controller, you're the desk sergeant of those 10 sites and the MAF, and you've got to control access and all that stuff. But you've got to know a lot of stuff. You got to know all the secret crypto and all these different things that you got to do. And so it's a really involved test you have to take. And so while I was testing for that, I would study, but I would take practice tests like every trip we went out. And every single test I took, I failed. And he wouldn't ever show me the results. He was like, "Man, you did horrible on that test. Like, you need to do better." And I'm like, I'm studying 10 hours a day. Like I feel like I'm doing okay. And so anyway, that went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And when I finally went and QC'd, I aced the QC 100%. And I came out of the thing and I told him, and he was like, "Yeah, you've been acing it for weeks, dude." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, you've scored 100% on every single one of your practice tests for weeks. I just told you failed so you wouldn't stop studying. And I was like, "Hey man, thank you. That it worked." But all of his like kind of meanness, he was doing it for a reason, because he didn't want me to stop practicing. He didn't want me to let up. He wanted me to keep striving for to pass, and I'll never forget that. You know, that was a turning point. That was a turning point in our relationship, because I couldn't stand him. Every time we went out, I'm like, he's gonna make me study all the time and blah blah blah. But then when I realized what he was doing, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
So if you can capture that in a story, Milscifi, those are like true human, you know.
Right.
It's easy to write the guy's just a dick. It's easy to write that.
Mhm.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
easy to write the guy's just mean. He's
Yeah.
just bad. What's more difficult to write is he's all those things, but also good at his job.
Yeah.
You know, and because people don't like to think that. They don't like to think that someone who's good at their job is also a terrible person.
Right.
Newsflash, you can be good at your job and have it have nothing to do with what kind of person you are.
The history of the military, modern military, because way back in the day we didn't know as much, but the history of the modern military is full of people who were incredible soldiers in combat and got into huge trouble in civilian life.
Jake
Yeah.
McNasty.
Yeah.
Who?
Audie Murphy.
Jake McNasty.
Mhm.
Jake
McNasty, the guy who on D-Day parachuted out of airplanes, and his whole squad, they had Mohawks, and he went into, I forget what city it was, but during the Battle of the Bulge, and he radiated in supplies by himself and just kept running around the city as the Germans were trying to kill him, calling in supplies. Him and a squad of like 30 guys took 700 Germans hostage on D-Day, held them off at a bridge. Just, you know, his name was, they actually called him Jake McNasty. They didn't like him so much that they put him in a company by himself as a 21-year-old kid and made him the first sergeant of that company with nobody in it, just so they didn't have to deal with him because he couldn't stop fighting. And he came home from the war, became a drunk, got into just tremendous amounts of fights, crashed his car, found Jesus, became a mailman, and lived until he was like 95.
Mhm.
And
Jesus was at the post office.
I always think how interesting it would be to be like to meet that guy in his 40s, because this all happened when he was, you know, late teens, early 20s, to meet that guy in his
Yeah.
40s and go like, oh hey, this is a guy who single-handedly killed with his bare hands dozens of Germans, shot hundreds more, you know.
Well, like James was saying, Audie Murphy had, although he wasn't a bad guy, he just had problems.
Well, everybody,
Yeah,
I kind of
I
hate
think
that.
he more had problems problems with PTSD, even though
Yeah.
they,
He was
Right.
16 when he joined the army,
Yeah.
or 15.
but I'm
you know?
thinking more like Pappy Boynton, you know, not a really nice guy in real in his civilian life. And there's a whole there's somebody, I can't remember their name, so I won't guess at it. From in Black Hawk Down, in the actual historical event, the person who, I think is it
Ranger captain.
no, not the, well, I don't know about the captain, but I'm thinking about this Jude Law's character. I think it's Jude Law was in that, right? He played like a clerk who gets pulled into the battle. Well, the character's name in the movie is different from the guy in real life because he's supposedly like a composite character. Well, what really happened is the character he's based on got nailed for being a pedo or something like that. You know,
Oh,
so
nice.
it's, and there's been a lot of examples of that. Like you watch military movies that are based on history, and they've had to change somebody's name or conflate characters because one of those characters got in huge trouble.
What's the guy from the officer from Band of Brothers that killed the prisoners?
Oh, Spears.
Spears. Yeah. You
But
know,
he didn't
And
get
one
in
of
any
his own
trouble in real
sergeants.
life.
what's that?
And one of his own sergeants.
Right.
And
He
those
never
that
got in
really
any trouble
happened.
in
It
real
just
life, though.
the context of what happened isn't really represented in the show.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
and it's hard to know exactly what really happened just because like the guy himself gave different accounts.
Yeah.
But the one where he shot his own sergeant was because the sergeant was drunk and they were trying to do an ambush, and the sergeant had a freak out and they couldn't hold him down, and he was screaming and yelling, and they were gonna basically get everybody killed, and so he shot him.
Yeah.
And you know, justifiably so. It sucked, but you know, he in one of the books they interviewed him in, and he said that he would rather have his men be afraid of him and follow orders than respect him and not. which
Mm.
I mean, it's not mutually exclusive, but you know, the guy encouraged those stories because he wanted people to follow him and do as he said, no matter what.
You
There
know,
was
talk.
a there was one of the sergeants from, I think it was a gunnery sergeant. I can't remember for sure. It's been a while since I've seen it, from Generation Kill, which was an actual historical, thing
Mhm.
based on real people. But one of the sergeants who they kind of made fun of, and then in the end they're like, oh well, he was acting that way. Please your mustache, just to take our minds off the war. But he got in some trouble in real life for some really nasty things too.
Well, it's hard to be in the situation where you're like, especially the stupid global war on terror, where they're pushing you to your beyond your breaking point. They know they're pushing you beyond their breaking point, and then they just bring you back to the United States and dump you and say, "Hey,
Right.
do it on your own."
Yeah.
And
So
even more so than Vietnam, like it's very hard to feel good about those things, and you're being
Right.
pushed. And I think anything you put people in a pressure cooker, which these are stories that put people in pressure cookers more so than anything else.
Yeah.
And it's it's very rational in a lot of the ways people respond. Uh, we might not like it. I'm not obviously not pedophilia, but drinking, the things that people do when they get back and they're trying to relate to the world that doesn't function on the rules that they learn to function with. And it's very difficult when that stuff gets stamped on your psyche at that age to transition out of that, and the
Yeah.
relationships that trying to show that. Like, I guess, a lot of the stories we're talking about, it's not a fun thing to talk about,
Right.
more books like Johnny Got His Gun, or um, another one I like a lot is Matterhorn talks, it's more active duty, but I don't know, those relationships, I think finding a balance of that, and Rick did that in Drop Trooper, and I think
Yeah, well,
the
when they
psychological
wanted me to
impact.
take the series beyond the war,
Yeah, yeah,
the Athon guys were like, well, you need to write more books. I'm like, the war ended in book 4. What the heck am I going to do? Uh, so I had to start stuff up after the war, and I figured what better way to introduce it than to have Cam and Vicky, you know, in their happily ever after, quote unquote, living on that farm that they wanted to get, and then finding out, we went and bought this ranch, and we're all far away from the war and everything, but it's still in here,
right.
and we still have to deal with it.
one of the things
Yeah,
that really drove me crazy about the third Hunger Games book was, and the second one to a lesser extent, is like every 5 pages it seemed like the protagonist was having a mental breakdown and they had to drug her, and I'm like, there are people who can't handle the stress of war, and it's hard to say who that's going to be. But when you're writing like from the story, the point of view of the main character or the hero, generally speaking, the difference between people who can act in those tough situations is that they put it in a box and they move on,
right.
Right.
and that box is great right up until the war ends, because when that external pressure ends, that's when everything explodes.
Yeah.
While there's external pressure, they can kind of maintain it and hold it together for a while. And so it's frustrating to me when you have people have advanced PTSD symptoms in a book 5 minutes after they've experienced the event that caused it,
Yeah.
For sure.
because that's not how that works. Read a psychology book for
It's
the love.
also
Well,
not the story that people sign up to read. Like,
yeah.
that there are definitely great books that deal with that, but that's not necessarily what the MILSF is trying to do initially, anyway.
You
That's
need to
Well,
nod. You definitely need to nod to it. It definitely needs to. I mean, I address it in books and stuff too, but I mean, like, like you can't turn your whole book into a exploration of someone's PTSD.
a depressing view. Yeah, and like you're saying too, like that doesn't appear right away, and a lot of times it doesn't appear the way we think it should appear, and a lot of times it appears in stages. Very small things kind of grow into the thing, and in the military we've all seen it, and I don't like we've all been out for a while, so the way they deal with it could be different now, but like a lot of people just dismissed it and
Mhm.
ignored it. And if you talked about it, like that, you were done. But I think it's really hard to dive into that in the stories that we're telling, because we're not telling the after, we're telling the during. And so that
I
a
have
lot of
told the
times it's,
actor.
well, I'm saying in general, in Milscifi, you're telling the during, not the after. And you could deal with the after in certain aspects of the books. But it's really hard to show those the effects of that like in the during without
Right.
Getting back to relationships a little bit, I think that it's one of the interesting things is to show the effects of PTSD, that going home from the war on the relationships. Um, I mean, and you may not get the chance depending on what the nature of your story is, but like for instance, in Earth at War, I had the main character big time dealt with PTSD and it destroyed his marriage, and he's still like not totally over it until he gets back into the Marines and starts going back into combat, and then all of a sudden the PTSD is not a thing anymore. It's not bothering him because that's the natural state for him now.
yeah.
I
But
found out in my 40s that something I thought was just who I was ended up being like, no, like the psychiatrist told me, he's like, no, that's a symptom of PTSD. He's like, everybody I've ever seen who's in the military has some form of hypervigilance.
For sure.
And that's, that comes from your time in the service. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, it's just like, that's just how I am, Doc. It's just,
Right.
I can never relax. There's no relaxing. You don't get to relax on the couch. You don't need to go into public and relax. That's not a thing that you adults do. And he's like, no, literally everybody does that. I'm like, oh, okay.
You know what? I just had a thought too when we're talking about relationships, when we're talking about like marriage or spouses or significant others or senior enlisted junior, whatever the relationship might be.
Matt Wedge.
The one of the things I don't know if I'm going to explore in Weaponized, which I just probably not have the bandwidth to do it, is the parent-child relationship
I was just
with
gonna
a
bring that up.
service member and their child. And one of the things I know personally in my life that I struggle with, it's not PTSD, but it's a symptom of being in that environment, the military and the police department, in how you deal with your kids. And some people they don't make there's not a drastic shift in how they deal with their kids. They can go from being the war fighter to being the loving dad. But some people have a hard time
Some people
drawing
throw
that
books at their
line.
kids.
Yeah. The thing
Throw
that
a
I
bunch at
struggle
you.
with is, in the police department more than the military, we operate on the ask tell make paradigm, where if you're trying to have somebody do something, you ask them to do it, and if they don't do it, you tell them to do it, and if they still don't do it, you make them do it. And I did that for so long in the police department and also in the military that carries over into how I deal with my kids too. And
That
it's one
sounds
of
good
those
to
things
me.
that
Ask, tell, make. That's
right. And for me, I'm like, it's completely logical. Like this makes
My kids
sense.
hate that.
Yeah, my kids hate it too, and my wife doesn't really like it
If you
either.
wanted me
So
to do something, why didn't you just tell me? I asked you
I
to do
asked. That was the tell.
I
I
asked.
mean, I've
Um,
been told I'm not one of your soldiers in relationships. So that's
yeah. It's a struggle, right? Because if you're in the
yeah.
military and you're an NCO or an officer, or even like, kind of middle ground enlisted where you're like a team leader or whatever, you're not dealing with that so much. Like you're like, this is an order, go and do it, and they have to go do it. But in the civilian world or in your personal relationships, that's not a thing. You're not going to give your wife orders, and you're not going to, I mean, maybe you do give your wife orders, but she's probably not going to listen to you, and definitely the kids aren't going to listen to you either. And that's a struggle for me. I don't know how I'm going to deal with the father-daughter relationship, because he has a daughter, a younger daughter in the story, but we don't meet her, and at least in the first two books. We may in the third. So I'm kind of struggling to
Can you
to
please not
show.
do the thing where she hates him?
No, I'm not going to do that.
Can you
I
do
don't
the
like
thing
that
where
trope.
she like adores her father and thinks he's the greatest thing ever, and then just
Yes.
go with that? Because
Well, and the
that's a
thing is,
much
she's
better
young
thing.
enough that she doesn't know really what he does. Like it's the thing, like you know your dad's a cop, but you don't know what your dad really does. Or you know your dad's in the military, but you don't know that he's a Navy SEAL going off and pulling off missions all the time. You just know that he wears a uniform and he's in the military. And that's kind of what I want to show. My thing is I don't know how I'm going to present the relationship from the father's perspective to the kid. Like, is he going to be easily able to snap out and go, come here and hold her and love her and be there? Or if he's going to have some kind of standoffish, I don't know how to deal with the child relationship, right? Because he's been through so much. I don't know where the line is.
You've got a daughter, right, Josh?
Yes,
You
I
remember
do.
when she was 3?
Yes, but I've never been in a high stakes. Well, I mean, I have, but not in the terms of the story,
I
right?
just watched a thing about a bunch of Navy SEALs talking about how, like, it's, for some strange reason, most special operators that have multiple children have more daughters than sons. And the way they feel about their daughters and how they come home and they're just like, that's where they want to be, is with their 3-year-old in their lap, and, you know,
Yeah.
take them out to buy ice cream and stuff like that. I mean, I've got 4 daughters and 2 sons, and no matter how hard my life gets, my 5-year-old makes my life better. And I kind of feel like, from everybody I've ever talked to, that's kind of like the maybe not your 5-year-old son, who I will strangle, but your 19-year-old son.
That's the thing. It's easy to buy them ice cream. It's hard when you have to discipline them. That's the thing.
Daughters are easy when they're little. They're difficult when they're teenagers. Boys are easy when they're teenagers and difficult when they're little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
One relationship I want to bring up, which I'm not thinking of a lot of, maybe except historical fiction when you think of, dynasties in the military, but something that is really always interesting to see in like military SF or military in general is at a senior parent who's in the military and then a child who is in the military. So like the general with the lieutenant, and the lieutenant is struggling to be their own person, and the general is struggling with, I have the power to keep my child safe, but I have to let them go be their own person, which could very realistically mean they will die. That's one that's always hits
and you
me
do
in
see that
feels,
kind of relationship a little bit, but I think the more often than not, that trope is twisted where the son is like the son of a general, like you're talking about, but he did use his name to get where he is. Right. And I can't think of any examples where the son is a good warfighter in and of his own right, and he is trying not to rely on his father. I'm sure that they're out there.
Wholesale slaughter.
Oh, did you do that?
Well, his father was like the king / commanding general of the whole nation, and he changed his name.
Oh, nice.
So when he went in the academy, nobody would know who he was.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's
I do too.
That kind of thing is really interesting to me, because I think, like, when we talk about tropes a lot and they get overused in Milscifi, they get overused, but they always get used the same way.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating when you're like, I know where this is going to go,
At the point where it becomes overused, it's not a trope anymore, it's a cliche.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Good.
To some degree, all
quasi trope.
Yeah. To some degree, all tropes are cliches. And this is kind of why I hate the word, but the thing is, and I always tell people this: you can do anything you want in a story. You just have to do it well.
Yeah.
I can't tell you necessarily what well is when it comes to specific things, but if you want, for instance, Fantastic Four. I'm not going to spoil it or anything, but it's the first time in a long time I have seen a loving husband-wife relationship and family relationship in a movie where there was absolutely no drama involved around the relationship. It was just 2 people who love each other. And I was just like, thank you for writing that well. Or, for instance, Superman, it's like, oh, you can't write Superman as he is in the comics. It's too cheesy. Nobody will like it. And, wow, James Gunn did it well, So you have to.
Is that the new Superman?
The new Superman. Oh,
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, it's fantastic.
No spoilers.
No spoilers. It's just fantastic.
Oh, so you're saying the new one is good?
The new one.
I gotta see it too. Everybody's
good.
saying it's great.
I saw the trailer and I just thought it looked.
The trailer did not
cheesy.
do it justice. The trailer took. Whoever made the trailer is an idiot. They took scenes they thought would be exciting, and they put them in the trailer.
Okay.
And you completely lose the context. That is the truest form of Superman I've ever seen presented on screen.
Really?
I kid you not.
I'll have to check it out. And all you guys are saying that the new Fantastic Four is good too.
Yeah,
it's very good.
Yeah. I like it.
And relationships under stress, I think that's something the trope is always to have like internal stress in anything. And I think that's one of the things people like about MilSF, or I like about it, is like we can have a team against an external pressure, and we don't have to get bogged down in stupid internal drama, to me, which is just drama. But if you have an actual goal we're working toward, and the family can be together, or the like, that to me is just a lot more satisfying to read. I don't want to. I have enough of that in my own life. I don't need to read it.
For sure.
Pointless stuff
So
too. Like if it has a point, like if you're
yeah,
like I've got a book that has a bully in it, and you're kind of, and we've all read that in MilSF or any books
Yeah.
really, like there's a bully and everybody hates him. But there was a point to having him in the story, and then you find out in the end of the story that, spoiler alert if you haven't read Grimm's War, he was a hero, even though he was a terrible person.
Yeah.
He died a hero. Um, you can't just randomly throw stuff in there like, well, this would happen in real life, so I'm going to do this even though there's no point. No, you have to have a point. There has to be a reason for things to happen. In stories work because things happen for a reason in stories. They don't necessarily work like that in real life. But even when you want to have something appear as if it happened for no reason in a story, there has to be a reason like behind your thinking. Like, hey, this is so I can show that sometimes people
right.
die in war for no reason.
Well,
But you
it's like
can't just flip a coin and be like, I'm going to kill this character today. Move
it's
on.
like it's the layering aspect, right? Like you're talking about, like having the bully. Like there's going to be a bully. Like that just happens a lot of times in military units and that kind of thing. There's going to be a bully, but just creating a bully character for the sake of having a bully character is not good writing. If you're doing that for a reason, and like if you want to have the bully character, great. Have him do something else. Have him do something that's beyond him being a bully, right? Like if he sets off a chain of events that help you succeed, or if he like you're saying, sacrifices himself to save other people, like have him do something else. You don't necessarily need to redeem him, right? If he's a bad guy, he's a bad guy. There are,
Again, two things can be true. You have plenty of people who are total jerks, good
100%,
at their
yeah.
job.
But look at the layering aspect of what you're doing with your characters, because you can use these tropes / cliches or whatever you want to call, like you can have these things in your stories. But if you can figure out a way to make them do something other than what the stereotype is typically known for, that means you're doing the right thing with your characters.
You have to understand why these things are the way they are, right?
Mhm.
So like if you don't understand why any of this stuff works the way it works, then you're not going to ever write a good version of it. You're going to write a cliched version that's a retelling of something that's already been written 100 times.
Yeah.
If you want to write a last stand battle, then you need to understand why the last stand works. If you want to write a sacrifice battle, you need to understand why the sacrifice works. If you walked away from 300 thinking it was just a bunch of dudes who died pointlessly, then you're never going to be able to write 300 well.
Well, and with the sacrifice thing, like going back to Strucker's War and the two main characters and the death, this is a spoiler warning, so whatever. But a lot of times those sacrifice stories don't have to be that is the thing that changes the battle, or this is the thing that changes the war. In Striker's War, it was a very small stake situation, and the guy that died sacrificed himself only to save his friend, like or the other members of his team. He saved like 4, 5, 6 people, right? But it was major to them, and it wasn't like this galactic saving. I'm gonna fly my ship into the Death Star and use some quasi Star Wars science. Like we should name this a quasi episode, like a pseudo quasi episode.
Pseudo quasi quantum episode.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is like if you ask anybody, a lot of the guys in World War II, when they asked what they were fighting for, there was always the guy next to
it
me.
matters
dude
to those
next to
6
me.
guys,
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about relationships today in our episode. If you have some cool relationships that happen to you in the military, please feel free to share in the comments. Reach out on our Discord. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. The relationships that work the best are the ones in physics in storytelling are the ones that are the most believable, the ones that are the most true. And if you can find those relationships in your own life and then translate them into your writing, it's going to be like 100% better than just, hey, that girl's
If
hot.
any of your real life relationships are believable.
Well, yeah,
Which-
my
which
editor
kind
told
of-
me
They
that
are.
Jacob and Nadia's relationship wasn't believable because they instantly liked each other and they started flirting. And I was like, I hate to break it to you, buddy, but that's virtually
I've
every
been there.
relationship I've ever had. So
I've been there.
yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. James, thanks
Thanks
for
for hanging
doing
out. Yep.
hosting duty.